Stand by for the Brewery Underground podcast.
In Asheville's harbor wise, craft and brews will meet the skies. Stephen Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite.
Brent, in going into this, I assumed beer, right? All the malt goes to beer, but that does not, does it?
No. So
You guys, looking on your website, as Steve referenced earlier, the great, fantastic website that you have,
Fantastic website.
you have some whiskey connections too, and actually one that's in Tennessee. If you want to talk about that, Chattanooga whiskey, I saw on your website.
Yeah. So we find ourselves to be kind of a secret sauce for a lot of distilleries. If you look at bourbon in its most clear, unadulterated form, you're talking about a recipe that's mostly corn, more than 51 by law, typically more like 70 to 80. And then you'll have, a portion of either raw wheat or raw rye, and then anywhere from 5 to 15% malted barley that's being called upon to do some pretty heavy lifting in terms of converting all the starch in that corn into something that can be utilized by yeast. So it's kind of a different animal. Most distillers are looking for higher enzyme products, but in the case of sort of modern craft whiskey, most folks are tamping down that corn and bringing up the malted percentages. That also helps support better conversion, or easier conversion, I should say. But probably more importantly, brings in a lot of interesting flavors. So when you sort of make the decision to swap out some of that corn for like a dark Munich or a crystal malt or a Munich rye or something like that, you're bringing in some really, really bold flavors into the mash that are much more pronounced than a raw wheat or a raw rye can deliver. Because most of the time, a distiller's malt, if driven just for enzyme production, is going to be kind of bland on the flavor profile. Maltsters don't have the ability to kiln at very warm temperatures to develop a lot of complex flavors, because those higher temperatures will knock down the enzyme levels. So when we say, oh, we've got more malt to work with, we want more flavor, all sorts of doors open up. So we can do a four grain bourbon. It's still bourbon by law, but has a whole host of new, more exciting flavors than kind of your standard everyday stuff.
Have you heard of, so we've talked beer, we've talked whiskey. Have you heard of any unique or any other, say, facets or industries that use malt that maybe you weren't expecting, whether it's drink or food products or anything like that?
There's some bizarre things out there. One thing we're looking at is the food industry is looking to step further and further away from artificial colors. And so specialty malt can deliver that color and some pretty similar flavor profiles and in more natural origin. So that's one thing we're exploring, but we're always keeping our eye out. We have a partnership with a chocolate, French broad chocolates here in Asheville. They use our dark Munich in one of their special releases. And so there's tons of fun stuff like that going on.
Yeah.
Real quick, the place, and I just imagine everywhere you walk in your facility, whether it's the offices or the warehouse or whatever, everything smells good. I think it's got to smell good, right? You got a smokehouse over here. You're smoking things. It's like, I just imagine.
It does. Most days, Brian and I have both tuned our olfactory senses, so we can open the front door and be like, okay, what's wrong? So something smells off, and we'll walk over and we'll check with the guys running the production, and they'll be like, oh yeah, the kiln cut off on batch number 2 in the middle of the night, and we're having to catch up, and it's like, okay, all right. And then we run several different smoked products, and so that's always fun too, to open the door in the morning and you get that waft of like pecan wood coming through, and you're like, oh yeah. we're working on that recipe, working on that order for, XYZ distillery. And so, yeah, the flavors are good. And our relatively new neighbor, Poppy Popcorn in town.
Oh boy.
So they're making artisanal popcorn in the sweet over. And so we get their like caramel popcorn flavors coming through our offices. So it's smells pretty good in there.
Not a bad combination. Maybe you guys could do some kind of collab somewhere down the road.
Right. We're trying. They've been so busy. They got to deal with the Buc-ee's. Yeah. So they got the Buc-ee's chain deal, and they have had their heads down ever since that.
Yeah, I live in an area, and I live south of Nashville where they just broke ground for a Buc-ee's. I think it's going to open in about a year or so. It's going to be crazy. Brent, I'm curious. You co-founded the company in 2011. How has your role in what you do evolved and really kind of changed from when you first started till now?
Yeah. No, great questions. When it started, and for many, many years, Brian and I we were shoveling grain. And so I don't think I was taken out of production duties until 2018 or 19.
Okay.
So, we were both standard entrepreneurs, wore all the hats, I would come home from a day of shoveling grain, and I would send out invoices from my, sofa at night, and then get back up and do it again, and I think now my current title is Chief Strategy Officer. And so that kind of puts me in the role of, I always say, it's like listening for the first hooves of the buffalo. You want to get the front end of that herd. And so I'm always in charge of like, what is the industry doing next? What is happening? And so I think that's probably the biggest shift is going away from production. And the only thing I'm involved with in production right now is QA/QC. So I still taste every batch via hot steep that leaves the malt house. So, but I'm not shoveling anymore. I've held roles as, sales director, all sorts of stuff. Again, wearing all the hats. The one thing I was very happy to get is when they looked at me and they said, Brent, we don't want you to ever touch QuickBooks again. And I said, fair enough. That's great. I wasn't good at it anyway. You can have it. So we've had, several talented accountants come in and drive that for us, and I'm thankful for them. So yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, but I still spend a lot of time with our customers. Technical sales and recipe development is still something I really get into. I wish I could tell you I knew I had a feel for where the industry is going next. I don't.
Yeah.
For the first time, I think I've gone a full 12 months without like, I think this style is going to pop next. It's like, I'm not seeing that. If anything, the style funnel is getting a little bit more narrow. Everything's yellow, I feel like, and everything's
very much so
5 to 7 ABV. And, that's why I'm so thankful to have a beautiful Doppelbock to drink. Cause
yeah. Well, I started joking before, you see some of these different beer styles that come along, and we joked about, Scott and I did, about the PB&J beers that have become like a big deal with breweries around here. And I don't know, where parts of the country, if it's everywhere or not, but I don't even know if there's even feasibility for you guys if somebody contacts you and say, hey, by the way, because you're like, we don't know. I mean, that may be a fad that lasts 2 or 3 months. So
right. Yeah. All I can say is throughout all these fads, we thought a lot of them were going to take us out. When seltzer came on, cider came on, and you look at their growth curves and we're like, all right, well, that's it. Everyone's going to drink cider now. And then you watch their data like fall off a cliff. And now the thing that we're watching is THC drinks. Like those things are going, I don't know what Tennessee's approach is to them, but the Carolinas are starting to kind of mainstream them. And meaning they're in grocery stores instead of just head shops. And that's interesting. But, again, experience teaches wisdom. And I'm less concerned now. It's like, I know they're going to have their pop and they're going to just have a real tangible impact on beer sales for, 3 to 6 months, maybe a year. And then people are going to be like, all right, been there, done that. THC drinks make me sleepy. Next,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Scott referenced this earlier, and I know he kind of asked you about this. That's, we've been doing the podcast for about 2 years, and it's something that I would say, Scott, when you say over the past year or so, when we have talked to brewers and we personally have experienced that, lagers have really become a big deal again. And
You're drinking another one. Yes.
yeah, exactly. But don't you think though, Brent, that helps you because
Oh,
you're going, look, things are coming full circle again, right?
yeah. No, I'm so excited for this. I mean, and I give full faith and credit to brewers who just absolutely willed this trend into existence. I mean,
Yeah,
we've been wishing and hoping and cheerleading the year of the lager since probably 2018 or 19, and I think 23, 24, and now we're there. Everybody is. I would venture most breweries are measured just as much by their IPA as their lager portfolio now, and
sure.
I think that's a beautiful thing. And yes, it absolutely helps us. It helps craft malt. It's a beautiful entree into what else is in this beer that I'm tasting. It's the yeast by design is kind of taking a back seat. The hops are restrained. They're serving a much more straightforward purpose of kind of just cleaning up your palate. And it's really the brewer's technique, water chemistry choices, and malt character that are driving these. And we're excited. We're here for it. And we're trying to just keep products in front of the brewers that they find interesting and, politely elbow our way into the brew house, into styles that were previously only the domain of German ingredients.
I think these traditional beers that we're just talking about, I think it's what's going to save, when I say craft beer, maybe even make it grow, because we're kind of flat, the last couple of years, ultimately,
Sure.
at least with breweries opening and closing.
Yeah.
That might be the thing that saves it. And it might even be a thing where those that aren't making it will, and they got to make them well, because like you said, you can't hide behind anything. It's got to be good. But also maybe it brings back some old world styles that haven't been produced, at least not produced in this country, still along those lines.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Just, things like that. It's like, hey, we discovered that these are good. Let's discover a few other things along the same lines that are still pure and traditional. And
right. And they're not so strong that you can't hang out and have a couple. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it, is kind of restoring that third place. It's like, is there a spot I can go that's truly a part of this community, and can I bring my family or my buddies or whatever, and we hang out? We see a lot of people winning in this. I mean, some of the headlines sound horrible, like we should all just pack up our stuff and go home, but the word on the street is much different. I mean, if you're bringing great beer, a well thought out atmosphere, well trained staff, some events, some interesting food, like that's a recipe for success. We see it time and again. I mean, there's definitely people kicking cans out there that are not, for whatever reason, are not able to succeed, but there's plenty of other success stories. I actually wanted to start a podcast this year that was just sharing those success stories, because I was so tired of hearing, if it bleeds, it leads kind of
Yeah.
approach
Oh, yeah.
to beer media. And, just time got away from us. But I definitely think it's a story that needs to be told. There's tons of success stories throughout the Southeast and throughout the larger craft beer market. So we're here for it. I mean, we're one of 70 craft malt houses around the nation that are, ready to support a variety of lager styles that are leaning into malt and barley varieties that grow in a much more regional approach. I mean, are we at wine terroir? No, we're not there yet.
Right.
So many beer journalists I talk to are like, please tell me we're ready, with that you can tell the difference between, the same batch of barley grown in one field to the other. And I'm like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. But
Yeah.
I can tell you the difference in the barley varieties, and I can tell you
right.
in the malt house, but that's it, but that's enough. I mean, if we can tell the difference in the same German style lager made it from a Southeastern brewery to a Northeastern brewery, then that's interesting. I mean, that's a cool story to tell.
Well, and the other thing is, Scott mentioned a few minutes ago about East Nashville Beer Works, and we did a podcast with them recently with their owner, Anthony Davis, and one of the things we brought up was, you know, they're seeing it. I mean, they know that Michelob Ultra is now, the best selling beer in America, right? But they're making other, like East Nashville Beer Works, for example, they're making other beers that are almost similar to that, but thank God, they're better. And I think Scott could say the same thing. I mean, he goes out and drinks beer. I go out and drink beer. Sometimes we go out and drink better, drink the beer together. And we see it and we're like, oh man, did you taste that lager? Scott, did you get that lager? Did you get that
Lager,
Pilsner? You
or the
know,
light lager, like you just said, like the East
yeah,
Nashville one's like it's a light lager too. You're like, this is actually good. Like National Brewing has a really good light lager. I think they won a gold medal or a medal at GABF a year or
yeah.
two
And
ago.
the key is it's not just watered down.
That is the trick, and that's a skill unto itself. I mean, will we see, the British mild come in and fill a similar space? I don't know. Probably not, because people are just scared of dark beer still. And so,
Yeah,
but yes, I think there's a lot of ground to be covered. I think the only thing that's challenging for craft breweries on the light lager front is the price point issue. If you sit down and they charge you $7 a pint, that's a tough sell.
When the guys used to buying a 24 pack for $9.
Right, exactly. So I think that piece is still to be determined. I think it's, like Bart Watson from the BA said, it's like the $7 a pint price point is a tipping point for the consumer. And
Sure.
I think that's most acute at that 4% light lager style,
sure.
because everyone immediately says, I can buy X amount of X beer. I mean, Coors Banquet or whatever, you immediately go to that comparison. And I think that's kind of a dangerous play for a craft brewer to get into. I'd want to make sure the rest of my I'd probably err of reducing that beer's price and add a quarter to everything else on the top wall. And
That's a really good
just so
strategy.
people recognize that, oh, yeah, okay, well, they did debit that down based on the ABV, and okay, that feels right.
Sure.
Good point. Yeah.
It's an excellent point. I hadn't heard that or thought about that before. That actually is actually perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that could be your loss leader when it's into a brewery,
Exactly.
possibly.
Well, we always think about it as, what's the price point that's going to stop you from that third beer? Is it $7?
Yep.
Is it $7.50? Like what's going to stop you from hanging out? And
Yeah.
and that's the price, and that's what every craft brewer should think about when they plan their menu out, is like,
Sure.
is this guy or gal done at 2 beers because now they spent $20 after
Yeah,
a tip?
you're right.
So, and because then we get into whole volumetric, issues of like, if I sell 3 beers at $6 versus 2 at $7.50, did I win? I don't know, and that's going to be different for every brew house and every tap room environment. Now we've
On your
completely
website,
off topic.
That's okay, but it's all
good.
connected.
Very
It's
good.
all connected. It's all we care about. On your website, you've got some partners listed, industry partners and university partnerships. And I love this because we've had, and they're actually on this list, Appalachian State University Fermentation Science Program has been on this podcast.
Yep.
Dr. Taubman's been on here, and they are one of your partners. Talk about them specifically and or the universities in general. What is that partnership like? And is it really just kind of is same kind of thing that you're doing with brewers, or is it a little bit different because they're universities?
It takes a lot of different forms. So like typically, it's about putting a little bit more of a face and a name and an experience around malt. If you're a student in a brewing class or program, and I always kind of pick on it because malt kind of gets short shrift, it's like, oh yeah, malt, here we go. It's 2 days out of your whole curriculum, and it's like, but if the students visit the malt house, they go through the different steps of the process in real time, taste the grain at each step, see it, then do the hot steep with me and all of that. It's like, it's a deeper imprint in terms of like what the role that malt plays in recipe development, because inevitably that, like a class from ASU will come visit, do the tour, and then I will send them home with different products. And their, next brew day is a mix of recipes from all of our products. And everyone's like, holy crap, I've homebrewed before, but I'm getting this different note from Riverbend's Dark Munich versus Wireman's, or this Pilsner absolutely outshines something from the big boys here in North America, and light bulbs go off. And so I think that's where we really like that academic connection, is that it's the old adage, home brewers become pro brewers, right? So we're catching them in that development stage. And then sort of from a true academic standpoint, we have some really interesting partnerships with folks like the University of Kentucky, where we're actually test malting material that they've grown under different growing conditions to see, hey, is there terroir? Does that difference in fertility management actually translate into different specs? Or, a better barley, a higher test weight, a better performing malt, so it really runs the gamut from early intervention, let's call it, with an aspiring brewer, to a seasoned academic with a PhD who has a totally different set of goals.
That's so cool. Like, thinking back on that episode, I don't know. I just feel like, just putting it all together, right? If I was early in my fermentation career, if I'm at the University of App State or wherever, or App State University, I would want to know about these things. It might be one of those things you don't think about on the front end, or like, oh, I can take this with me in my career later on. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and it, typically most of these students are younger, right? And so
Mhm.
they have a broader suite of concerns. It's not just like, hey, teach me how to make beer. That's cool, but yeah, hey, well, I also have some environmental things that I'd like to uphold. And well, so this checks that box too. This malt was made with barley that's grown 100 miles away instead of 3,000. So that's a win. And so we kind of have that stage, if you will, to sort of talk about all the things that make local malt valuable. It's not just the flavor and freshness, but we've got some environmental benefits. We've got some local economy benefits. A whole host of things that can kind of resonate with a lot of different consumers.
see, I would think in that instance, again, as a student going into any of those programs, my thought would probably be, hey, I'm going to go in, I'm going to be a brewer, right? I want to brew beers. And then you realize there's other aspects, like Stephen Moxley, I think, went on to like a yeast company, like
Yeah.
all these other avenues you might not even have thought about as far as a career goes later on, when you graduate 4 years later.
Yeah, sure.
And malt being one of them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, early on, we had a lot of environmental science majors and agroecology type folks coming through to work at the Malt House, because again, we represented that perfect intersection of, something that had mass appeal, but also had an environmental ethos behind it. And that really resonates with the younger generation. I mean, I'm full gray hair now and almost 50. So I wouldn't say I'm part of that generation anymore, but, still, that's really one of the tenets that Brian and I laid out is, when we looked at companies like New Belgium and Patagonia, like, we wanted a company that had that sort of durable environmental ethos behind it. And we've been able to stick to it. And we're pretty proud of that.
Will you continue on that pace then and talk about sustainability? You guys have a big section on your website that we keep referring to because it's so awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, and there's I know there's a million angles of sustainability, but please talk about kind of your angle.
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, just to kind of frame things up, malt is a global commodity. Malt is primarily produced in Western US, Western and Central Canada, Western Europe, Australia. And so it's a global commodity. It literally moves all over the planet with trains, planes, automobiles, boats, you name it. It moves around. The Southeast was typically not seen as a barley growing region, still isn't. If you look at the USDA's barley production maps, we're not on it. We're a rounding error. We're dust compared to the bigger producers. And so we're in Asheville. The closest major malt house to where we are is Chilton, Wisconsin. That's Breeze. Breeze buys their barley from the Bighorn Valley in Wyoming, which grows exquisite barley. No shade in that at all. But the trip from the farm to the fermenter is a couple thousand miles. As I said, we're at max 400 to 500. Most of our stuff is coming from 300 or less. So from a strictly food mile perspective, we've got a win there. And obviously the people over in Europe have thousands of 8,000 miles, I think, is the distance from Wyoming to Asheville. So we've got some basic food mile stuff there that is a win. More recently, we started as a organic, and Mother Nature quickly showed us that was too aggressive and that we needed to step back and stay conventional to just get a decent crop of barley in the door. But one of the most exciting things that we've been able to jump back into is regenerative agriculture. So we're the first Regenified certified malt house on the planet. And what that basically means is we are able to preserve that transparency and traceability of a given lot of barley from a regenerative farm all the way through to the brewery. So back to our friends at Full Steam in Durham, they're the first certified brewery. So we're now closing that loop from a regenerative certified farm in Maryland. Their barley comes to us in Asheville, and then the malt goes to Durham to make beer. So regenerative agriculture includes things like no-till farming, which reduces erosion. We've got cover cropping, which also reduces erosion, but also preserves nutrients and carbon in the soil. All these different things improve the soil health and actually build structure within the soil that retains carbon. And Regenified is really, really special in the sense that they visit their farms every year and do an entire battery of tests that actually documents the carbon sequestration that takes place in these farms. It documents the increase in biological activity in the soil and the surrounding areas. All these beautiful things are happening. So we're really proud of that Regenified certification as a way of sort of staying ahead of a lot of the marketing and what we consider greenwashing around agriculture. By documenting farms that take these practices to heart, we're seeing environmental benefits and seeing brewers and distillers get excited about this and really fold this into their marketing efforts and environmental management plans as well.
Amazing. And I know we're running long, and we want to let you go.
No, you're good. You're
You got a
good.
million other. You're doing good. Okay, I got a couple. I won't keep you forever. I got a couple others.
Go for it.
Quality. How do you guys maintain quality? You've got to have, because you kind of have it twofold, right? You have to have quality coming in, and you touched on it a little bit earlier.
Yep.
And your product has to go out. Your quality has to be there on the product going out too. So how do you maintain that? That's got to be a lot. It's got to be a big part of the day, if you will.
And not only that, let me because I want to follow up on that too, Scott, because I was thinking about this earlier, how the quality has changed with technology over the years since you started, right?
Yeah. So several things. Let me see. So first and foremost, I mentioned it earlier, a certificate of analysis, a C of A. So each batch that's produced goes up to Hartwick College in New York State. Their Craft Beverage Institute does a full battery of tests on that. So we get everything from protein to enzyme package to extract, all of that. Full battery of tests done there. In-house, we're able to do friability, moisture, color, flavor. And so that's kind of me and the lab team doing some of that basic QA/QC up front. What we can do in the lab is typically enough to give it a thumbs up, thumbs down to go to market. If we have concerns about a given batch, we can sort of push it off to the side, put it in the sort of a holding pattern until we get lab data. And then that's really kind of the final, is this okay to release? Is this true to brand? Go forth and conquer. Here we go. So that's a big piece of it. There is really a lot of testing. The front end testing, like we talked about earlier, is really crucial. We don't let bad barley in the building. So that helps us sort of put a floor under a lot of what we're trying to accomplish. And then I mean, it's really just, I mean, some of it's basic. It's just good housekeeping, keeping a clean malt house keeps the bugs at bay. If there's nothing for them to eat on the floor, they don't proliferate, And so it's really a team effort, everybody kind of eyes on the prize every day. We have an adage that's completely worn out, but if it's just simple, it's see something, say something, like
Yeah.
it can be a torn bag in the racks. It can be a temperature range that's out of spec when we're in germination. It can be a funky smell and coming out of a germinating batch. It's our team really that's driving there. I mean, everyone's got their eyes and ears and nose open at all times.
Any one of those things you just mentioned could be a small thing, right? Just in
Yep.
passing, but a small detail, but it could affect the final product.
Exactly. I mean, too much dust is a perfect place for bugs to hang out and build a new family, and then their family builds a family, and
And you know what? And not that you have to give any examples, but
yeah,
I would imagine, like anything else, you've had to learn the hard way a few times over the years, right?
oh yeah, no, we call it the halo, and basically, if a super sack bag has a bug infestation and they're really crunching on that material, the dust will come out of that bag and form a halo around the pallet, and that pallet is immediately going out the door into the trash can. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
so just little things like that, looking for, it's just basic hygiene, and it's just knowing what the correct portfolio of smells should be like in the malt house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or lack of them, right? If you don't
Right,
smell
right.
something going
Sometimes if
on
you
in there,
don't smell something, something's wrong.
something's
Right.
wrong. You guys, and tell me, Plow to Pint Pilsner.
Yes.
It's something you guys developed with Full Steam Brewery. Is that kind of a private label beer for you guys? What is that exactly?
So Cloud of Pint is kind of Full Steam's ethos that we sort of play into really nicely. We've worked on a ton of projects over the years with Full Steam. Really, they love the fact that we're able to tie individual lots of barley back to a given, or malt back to a given farm. And so whether it's Pilsner or whether it's with this Regenified stuff, they've released an ESB, they've released an Oktoberfest, and then let's see, we're doing for North Carolina Craft Brewers Conference, we're doing a Belgian Pale that I'm really excited about. But again, it's about having that two-way street of dialogue between maltster and brewer, where we're able to get these sort of custom built projects put together. And that's just not something big malt houses can do. It's just sort of like, here's our catalog. This is what we got. Pick from the menu. There's no
Right.
opportunity to say, well, I'd really love to have a lot that's just Farmer John stuff from this year, and I'm like, all right, well, give me a couple of weeks and let me make a floor batch, and we'll do that. What's your target SRM on color? Okay, cool. We'll add some heat to the curing step, and we'll make you what you want, and those types of projects just satisfying for all involved, when the finished beer, especially if it wins a medal or something like that, like
Sure. Yeah.
feels good.
Yep. Maybe it's part of the tour. I saw something somewhere along the way about sensory training. And I don't know if it was sensory training for staff, or was it sensory training for like people taking tours, or was that two different things, or is it the same thing?
All of the above. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
the hot steep method.
Okay.
So this was something developed probably 7 or 8 years ago. A lady named Lindsay Barr, who used to be with New Belgium and has now launched a company called Draft Lab, has really been at the bleeding edge of this. Basically, what Draft Lab is it sort of bolts so a hot steep is basically, like I said, the same concentration of malt tea that a brewer would create in a brew house. But the trick with Draft Lab is gives you a true to brand sort of analysis step questionnaire to go through. For example, if it was that Southern Select I was talking about earlier, our British Pale Ale malt, it's like, it's going to ask you, is it in this color range? Okay, cool. Am I picking up bready biscuit notes? Okay, excellent. Am I getting a little bit of like fruit? Am I getting a little bit of toast? Okay, cool. It's going to walk me through all of those sensory sort of check boxes to arrive at the ultimate question: is this true to brand? And so we use that in-house for your QA/QC. We use it in sales as a way of saying, here's our Pilsner malt up against, XYZ malt house's Pilsner malt. How do you feel about ours? Is it different, better? Do you not care? All right. But really, to answer your question though, with training, the most effective thing that we found with like bartenders is helping them connect dots, is saying, here's what Riverbend did. Here's the farmer. Here's how we made this malt. This, pale malt is in this style beer that you're pouring. Here's the connection side by side. Do you pick it up? And that's when the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, wow, okay, now I understand what malt does. It's not just the sugar source, but it's giving all these other nuances to the beer along with the yeast and hops. Of course, it's like, it really helps drive home the role that malt plays. I always give this analogy. So it's like, if beer ingredients were the Led Zeppelin crew, right? So malt is John Bonham in the background, just banging on the drums, doing an incredible job, holding things down. He's not always the one you talk about when people talk about Led Zeppelin. They talk about Robert Plant with his shirt off, and that's hops, right? That's Robert Plant, and he gets all the show-stopping groupies and all the headlines being the hops. But without John Bonham, Led Zeppelin doesn't exist. So, so that's kind of the storyline I like to tell when it comes to where malt fits into the craft beer spectrum.
Who was Jimmy Page in that analogy? Yeast?
So maybe if Robert Plant is the sexy dry hop, Jimmy Page is like still the sexy bitterness hop that's playing like right behind.
That's great. That is great.
John Paul Jones is who?
John Paul Jones would be, maybe he's the yeast. So still very important, still laying down a crucial part of the rhythm section.
Right. What's that the saying? The sum of the parts?
Yes.
Whatever
exactly.
that is, right?
The sum is greater than its parts.
The individual parts, exactly.
Yeah.
But I do love the John Bonham analogy. It keeps everything together, keeps everything on time and the whole thing.
Right. The soul of beer.
Totally. Look, I got a million more. We gotta let you go here soon. But one other thing, talk about your team, just your team in general. Like you talked about you're able to do different things now, or they want to allow you to do other things. But talk about your team. Like, you've got to have a wonderful team as a whole.
Yeah.
And not only that, let me also expand on that question. How has your team grown from when you first started to now?
Oh, geez. Yeah. So when we started, our first employee came in and we're just like, we don't really have a job for you other than to just help us lift things. And it was like, cool, I'm in. This sounds great. And I'm like, all right. Come on, show up at 8:30 tomorrow morning. So, it started from just Brian and I. Now we're like 16 or 17 folks strong, covering the Southeast in sales. We have somebody at the Malt House 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our production crew is great. Like everybody else, it was hell going through the pandemic and then the Great Resignation after that. But thankfully, things have settled in. We've got a beautiful group of folks that come in and just work their butts off every day for us. It's a lot of the same stuff, but again, there's just enough nuance that if you fall asleep and get complacent, something's going to go completely off the rail. So thankfully, like, everyone has been with us long enough to watch things go off the rails, and they all are dialed now. So it's great.
Yeah.
It's, when we first got started with these GKVs, think about it like train cars lined up, so it's like we steep one batch, push it into batch 2, steep the next one, push it into batch 3, and so on and so forth. If something screws up in one of those, they all just mash together, and then you have 100,000 pounds of train wreck on your hands.
Mhm.
And again, we were talking about Helene earlier, speaking of 100,000 pound train wrecks. When the power went out and the water went out, that's exactly what we had in Helene. And I can't say enough about our crew. I mean, they showed up the next day. I don't even know how some of them got there. One guy showed up too early, actually. And then trees fell down and he couldn't get back to his house. And so it was just amazing to watch everybody come together. I mean, we cooked communal meals together for a week and a half as power was coming back on and the city was getting its legs back under it. And it was fantastic. I mean, I'll never forget. I showed up. One of our guys, Moses, he was standing guard over the malt house, and I was like, "How long have you been here, Moses?" And he was like, "All day." And I'm like, "Wow, thanks, bud. That was way above the call of duty." You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard the National Guard helicopters are overhead. Like, I think we're okay. But it was
Yeah.
that kind of dedication that just showed up over and over
Yeah.
again after Helene. So
Yeah, and obviously you're referencing Hurricane Helene that happened,
yeah,
in Asheville. I mean, it devastated a lot of Asheville a year ago.
it did.
I mean, when you look back now, almost a year later, I mean, are you all still impacted at all by that in the local community?
We come back strong. A couple of our customers, their facilities were just truly wiped off the map, so they're
Yeah.
not back. But as a town, I mean, I think we've snapped back pretty well. We're a resilient group. I'm still hearing that tourism numbers are down double digits from where they were last summer, which isn't awesome, but we're having a great leaf season. I mean, I'm almost, it sounds silly, but I'm thankful to be stuck in traffic some days. I know that means people are visiting us and they're excited to see the foliage and hike in the woods and then come back and drink and eat in our breweries and restaurants. And I think that's definitely a beautiful thing. I mean, Asheville's been a tourism town for well over 100 years now. So
Yeah.
if that's not happening, then something's wrong. It feels off. So people are coming back. Kudos to everybody in the community for rallying around and rebuilding and getting restarted. I was just meeting with the guys from Zillicoa earlier today, and their story is just really just one of grit. I mean, they just went back at it before anyone knew if they could rebuild. They just started rebuilding and said,
Yeah.
we're going to do this, And I
Yeah.
think that's emblematic of a lot of folks around town that we're just going to go do this and
Right.
rebuild and remain the really amazing place that we've always been.
It is my favorite beer city. It is for so many reasons. The beer is fantastic. The ability to walk from one to another
Yes.
in so many is such a huge factor too. It's a great town, Steve. We're going to get you there
Absolutely.
soon.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful.
It's a good spot.
Yeah.
The people are wonderful, and it's anytime you can have an Asheville day where you get up and go hiking or biking or fishing and then come back and have a beer at somewhere in the River Arts around 3 or 4 o'clock, a great meal, and then go see some live bluegrass. Like, I think that's just as good as it gets.
It is. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna end on this. So Steve might have some more, but tell us something about malt. I've said that 3 times, haven't I? Tell us something about malt we may not have known if we haven't covered it already.
Oh, what can I say? New barley varieties take over a decade to create.
Wow.
So I mentioned Avalon, I think, from Virginia Tech. That variety began life at a roundtable discussion in 2013, 2014. And we did not have commercial quantities of it until 2023. It was worth the wait. It's an awesome variety, but 10 years.
What as a follow up to that, real quick?
Yeah.
What causes that? Is it just red tape? Is it just kind of developing it?
It's Mother Nature. So we don't
Yeah.
we don't use GMO techniques. So it's old school genetic crosses, and then they basically select the strongest offspring over the course of several crop years. And the great thing about Avalon is during that 10-year trial, it went through hot years, dry years, wet years. It got all the stressors put on it. And so the variety that made it to the finish line from that type of brutal trial is tough. And the flavor profile is great. So it works for maltsters, brewers, and farmers.
So at the end of the day, after the 10 or the end of after the decade, you've got a good product.
We've got something good. And we've got lots of his brothers and sisters waiting in the wings to be the next thing. So we've basically created a new genetic pool of Southeastern grown malting barley varieties to work with for the foreseeable future.
Well, Brent and Steve, you may have something. Brent, you've taught us so much. I'm telling you, I've got 100 more questions. We'll have you back on if you'll come back on with us at some point. This was fantastic.
You bet.
Was absolutely fantastic. And I'm blown away. Like, I have goosebumps just from what we've learned today. I swear.
Awesome. My work here is done then.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
know what?
You'd be proud.
If only my wife said that after spending an hour and a half with me.
Oh, there you go. We see what you did there. No, you know what? You know what, Scott? I have questions, but as you said, we're going to save them for the next time. I'm going to go back on their website at riverbendmalt.com because there is so much on that website to check out, so much information. I would just tell people, go there if you want to learn more. If you haven't heard enough on this podcast, go there and you will hear and see a lot more from you guys. That is Brent Manning. He is the co-founder of them, and we certainly appreciate it, man. Thank you for coming today.
Appreciate you
on the Brewery Underground podcast
and spending so much time and sharing so much knowledge with us.
Absolutely,
my pleasure.
From Nashville, we say cheers to you, sir.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Brent.